Rhea Carter guided the Nova Seeker through the outermost reaches of the Alora Expanse, where the stars seemed more like half-seen spirits than celestial beacons. The vessel's interior glowed softly with display panels that revealed the minimal resources the crew had at their disposal. Salvage runs in these remote sectors were far from glamorous. Long stretches of emptiness punctuated by the occasional drifting hulk. This time, the routine was disrupted by a puzzling anomaly that came through the deep space scanner. It appeared on the console as an intermittent pulse, barely distinguishable from background radiation, yet unmistakably structured. The moment Lieutenant Lucas Harrington remarked on this signal, Rhea sensed the electric thrill of something extraordinary. Her years of experience told her that genuine mysteries surfaced rarely. The crew prepared themselves with a focus sharper than usual, each quietly hoping they had stumbled upon more than mere junk. Her gaze drifted across the cramped bridge as she recalled countless journeys that had yielded only battered hulls and expired life support systems. The Alora Expanse was an enormous frontier beyond the typical routes of commerce or colonization. If an object was resting out here, sending a call into the dark, it was either precious or dangerous. She had spent the better part of her career sifting illusions from truths in these lonely sectors. Even so, the possibility of an alien construct, something beyond the usual range of human or known allied design, still stirred her imagination. She directed the Nova Seeker to accelerate, gently pivoting it so that the feeble starshine from distant suns glimmered on the hull's edges. There was an uncanny hush among the corridors, as if the ship itself held its breath in anticipation. The preliminary scans suggested an anomalous mass combining unknown metallic and organic readings. This set the crew on edge. Among known galactic civilizations, only the Shenok had ever dabbled in partially organic hulls, but their standard designs were well documented and never quite reached this unusual amplitude of biosynergy. The Shenok were known for elegant, almost impossibly precise craft that emphasized perfect symmetries and flawless surfaces. The anomaly, by contrast, displayed a curvature that resembled natural formation, or perhaps cultivated biology, more than engineering. The idea that an advanced species might integrate living tissue into a starship had been speculated in scientific circles for ages, yet none of humanity's other contacts had demonstrated such a radical approach. This alone was enough to drive Rhea's curiosity to an almost obsessive degree, especially once she realized the shape was bigger than initially estimated. Its gravitational footprint exceeded the readings of typical cruisers, suggesting it was more than just a small research vessel. Without issuing direct commands and spoken words, Rhea transmitted the relevant data to each department, letting them see for themselves the bizarre composition and the faint transmissions that fluttered across frequency bands. The deeper they analyzed, the more perplexed they became. Some parts of the outer hull returned signals akin to chitin, reminiscent of insect exoskeletons, while others registered as highly conductive alloys, hinting at advanced electronics. The entire anomaly possessed a single repeating code that appeared to be a beckoning of some sort, rhythmic and steady. Hours passed in near silence as the Nova Seeker drew closer. The crew carried out standard approach protocols, rechecking every piece of equipment to ensure no detail was missed. The closer they came, the more the signal increased in clarity, as though an unseen intelligence realized they were approaching. Eventually, the unidentified mass came into visual range of the ship's forward cameras. The feed relayed a dark silhouette against the faint glow of a distant star, its edges seemingly fluid. With the ship's lights enhancing the scene, the object took on the form of a large, elliptical structure with faintly pulsating lines of light along its dorsal ridges, like veins carrying luminescent blood. The entire profile exuded an eerie magnificence, suggesting it might have once been home to a civilization whose science extended beyond the standard mechanical realm. The faint pulses of light on its surface sparkled through the vacuum, as if greeting them or perhaps warning them away. Despite her typical caution, Rhea felt an undeniable gravitational pull. If this was indeed a derelict of a higher civilization, the potential rewards were incalculable. A preliminary consensus from her heads of department was that they should deploy a smaller drone to investigate the surface before any manned contact. The drone launched silently from the Nova Seeker's belly, drifting closer to the looming hull. Through the drone's sensors, they saw up close the intricacy of the external plating. It wasn't uniform like typical Starship armor. Instead, it resembled a tapestry, interwoven with patterns reminiscent of vines or tendrils, giving the impression of organic art. The coloration was predominantly dark blues and blacks, yet shot through with filaments that glowed faintly in oranges and greens. There were no obvious docking ports in the conventional sense, only smooth gradients that rose and fell like living tissue. The temperature differentials across the surface were uneven, some areas significantly warmer than others, which reinforced the notion that parts of it might literally be alive. When the drone found what could only be described as an orifice in the hull, the crew debated whether to explore it further. Rhea decided they needed direct observation. The drone slipped inside, relaying images of softly curving corridors that defied typical corridor geometry. The interior surfaces reminded them of sinew and muscle, yet they bore structural integrity that hinted at advanced engineering. Certain sections emitted subtle bioluminescent patterns that scrolled across walls as though responding to the drone's presence. The hull's inner layers looked to be a mixture of cultivated organic tissue and synthetic elements. The temperature inside was stable, and atmospheric composition readings indicated a fairly close match to human breathable air, though with unusual trace gases that might be toxic over prolonged exposure. Among the puzzling readings was a faint energy signature that could be a control centered deeper within. Encouraged by the drone's data, Rhea gathered her team. They included Dr. Amira Holt, chief scientist with a background in xenobiology, Lieutenant Lucas Harrington, head of operations, and Lieutenant Jasper Vance, in charge of security. Their suits were equipped with thrusters and rebreather modules for environmental adaptation. While the drone had established partial safety, none of them dismissed the possibility of traps or unexpected defenses. The line between technology and biology was so blurred here that they couldn't rely on standard infiltration protocols. With a measured approach, they locked the Nova Seeker onto a stable, matching trajectory alongside the alien hull and searched for a suitable docking aperture. Upon finding a gently sloping inlet, they extended a universal airlock tube. The docking process felt unnatural because the orifice they aimed for was not symmetrical or rigid as typical docking ports. It pulsed faintly, and as the clamp sealed, there was a moment when everyone felt a collective shiver. Entering that threshold seemed akin to venturing into the body of a massive organism that might decide at any moment to repel them. Stepping through the portal was equally disorienting. The walls were softly luminous, some sections flexing in response to motion, and the air, though slightly stale, was breathable after preliminary scanning and filtration by their suit systems. They moved slowly through corridors that curved and branched out with little respect for human notions of a linear path. The surfaces held etched patterns that seemed to shift color in reaction to their proximity. Occasionally, they would pass an orb-like protrusion that resembled a cluster of organic monitors, flickering with alien characters that defied immediate translation. There was no sign of a conventional crew. No seats, no typical control panels, no compartments labeled or sealed off. Instead, everything felt like a continuous ecosystem, seamlessly integrated to maintain some vital function they had yet to discover. Dr. Amira Holt was the first to hypothesize that these corridors were self-maintaining, possibly even self-healing. She speculated that the difference between rooms and hallways might be minimal in a structure of this sort, where the entire interior served as both living environment and advanced machinery. She carefully took samples, pressing a specialized instrument against the softly throbbing wall to gather cellular material. Observations revealed a strange mixture of organelles and nanotechnological constructs, an unprecedented fusion of biology and engineering. Though her scientific mind, they eventually came upon a large chamber, spherical in shape, with tendrils dropping from the ceiling like roots. Multiple columns of faintly glowing filaments stood in neat, if alien, order around a central dais. This dais emitted a persistent hum that the suit's audio sensors picked up. The hum synchronized with the repeating signal the Nova Seeker had detected. Suggesting this was the origin. The chamber's walls shifted in shimmering cascades of color. The place possessed a solemn majesty, as if it were meant for a type of function no human blueprint could anticipate. Certain patterns on the columns vaguely resembled script. The structure of each line was reminiscent of Shenok aesthetics, symmetrical, flowing, and surprisingly minimalistic. Perhaps this was where the occupant or occupants had once accessed the vessel's primary intelligence. The hum increased in frequency when Dr. Holt approached a pedestal that rose from the center of the dais. The pedestal wasn't metallic, but had a glossy sheen that suggested partial crystallization. She gently rested her hand on it, and the moment she did, the interior lights intensified. For a few seconds, the entire chamber responded by displaying complex symbols across the spherical walls. The suit's translation modules struggled to find meaning in them. The only words gleaned from partial references in known Shenok languages indicated terms like discarded and inefficient. This repeated motif unsettled the team. If the Shenok had indeed designed the structure, why had they deemed it an abject failure and left it drifting in the void? The word failure set the tone for the next phase of their investigation. The team began systematically searching for a data core or records repository. This is how they discovered deeper compartments where the environment changed temperature and composition. One corridor gave way to an area resembling a laboratory, lined with spore-like orbs that occasionally flickered with internal phosphorescence. Scanning equipment indicated stored data in these orbs, possibly equivalent to memory banks. Within them lay logs referencing the creator's extreme pursuit of perfection. The log stated that once the project displayed design anomalies or unpredictabilities, the Shenok no longer wished to refine it. They had deemed it beyond saving, a flawed prototype in a culture that demanded flawlessness. These references hinted at internal debates among the Shenok over continuing or discarding the project. As the Nova Seeker's crew gradually understood the significance, their sense of wonder grew. This craft possessed a power core so revolutionary, it took them days of analysis to realize it was capable of localized space-time manipulation. Dr. Holt hypothesized that this design was meant to revolutionize faster-than-light travel, perhaps even enabling near-instant jumps across vast distances. She observed that the organic layers might serve as a self-regulating buffer against quantum fluctuations. The raw potential was staggering. With minimal refinement, it could surpass humanity's best propulsion systems by orders of magnitude. The fact that the Shenok had abandoned it underscored just how rigid their standards must be. The humans saw inefficiency and unpredictability not as reasons to discard the technology, but as hurdles to overcome. They had no illusions that it would be simple to adapt or fix an alien design so advanced, but the prize was worth the struggle. The extended scanning and data retrieval took on an urgency. Wordless excitement spread among the crew as they grasped that this vessel might grant humanity unprecedented capabilities. Rhea Carter oversaw all operations with a sense of measured caution. She refused to push too hard, too fast. The possibility that the Shenok could return at any moment lingered in her mind. The Shenok had historically kept their distance from human affairs, except for periodic, formalized contacts. If they discovered that humans were meddling with a piece of technology they themselves had condemned, the repercussions were unknown. Yet Rhea could not turn back now. The chance to understand and possibly harness such a breakthrough guided her decisions, balanced by the hope that they could glean enough knowledge before attracting undue attention. It was in the midst of these studies that the Nova Seeker's long-range sensors detected a gravitational distortion, a large starship emerging from subspace. The crisp lines of its silhouette on the sensor readouts confirmed suspicions. A Shenok warship had arrived, towering, lethal, bristling with energies that outclassed human craft. Rhea recognized it as one of the Dreadnought-class designs rumored to have unstoppable weaponry. Alarms sounded softly throughout the corridors, a subdued terror. The Nova Seeker was clearly outmatched if the Shenok decided to act. Rhea conferred with her command staff, deciding to keep communications open, projecting readiness rather than aggression. The bizarre hush inside the alien vessel contrasted with the tension that boiled up in everyone's gut. Within minutes, the Shenok Dreadnought initiated broad-spectrum communication. A cold, resonating voice demanded the immediate cessation of any attempts to revive or alter the inefficient vessel. The Shenok instructions left no room for negotiation, stating that the humans had violated proprietary boundaries. The repeated use of the term corrupted startled the crew. It implied that any human modifications, however minimal, were fundamentally polluting the original design. Yet, to the crew's astonishment, the Shenok did not immediately open fire. Perhaps they too wanted to observe the extent of the tampering. Rhea carefully prepared a response, although she chose not to deliver it in direct speech. Instead, she transmitted data logs showing human progress in stabilizing the vessel's power anomalies. She included an explanation, however brief, that humanity often improved upon failures rather than discarding them. A short pause followed, during which the Dreadnought's scanning beams swept over the alien craft. Then, the Shenok's next transmission carried a tone that was more perplexed than threatening. Their message implied disbelief that any discarded prototype could be made functional, let alone improved, by a civilization the Shenok deemed comparatively primitive. This stalemate stretched across hours. Both sides hovered in the vacuum, their every move measured. The tension nearly broke multiple times, yet it never escalated to open conflict. Something in the data logs, or in the Shenok's own deep history, apparently gave them pause. Communication from the Shenok soon carried an undercurrent of grudging curiosity, bordering on reluctant admiration. They seemed fascinated by the notion that a simpler, less rigorous approach, one that accepted incremental trial and error, could refine a design they had labeled unredeemable. The humans, by embracing the craft's so-called flaws, managed to activate significant portions of its systems. It was an ideological clash. The Shenok prized absolute flawlessness, discarding any invention that wavered from their narrow definition of perfection, whereas humans, accustomed to making do with imperfection, saw potential in incremental progress. Eventually, word reached the Nova Seeker that the Shenok Dreadnought had relayed the entire situation to higher authorities within their civilization. Perhaps for the first time in countless generations, Shenok leadership faced a contradictory example of success arising from the flawed. Meanwhile, on the derelict vessel, Rhea's crew made ever more exciting breakthroughs. Sensor logs indicated stable folds in space-time, allowing objects to cross between 2 points separated by significant distances in negligible time. The human effort was rough and not at all consistent, but it was proof enough to show that the design was on the brink of extraordinary achievement. The hull's living layers helped modulate the stress of these jumps, even if the entire process remained unpredictable by Shenok standards. Over the course of many tense cycles, the Shenok Dreadnought neither left nor drew closer. It stayed in observation, scanning regularly as though simultaneously assessing risk and possibility. The Nova Seeker continued to refine what it learned. Dr. Amira Holt devised a partial interface that used the suit's built-in translator and neural net to interact with the ship's living console. By adjusting the biological signals, she navigated system diagnostics. She concluded that the ship's original designers had run into complexities they considered unreliable. Instead of devoting further research to mitigating these issues, they decided the unpredictability made the entire concept worthless. They then simply left the craft adrift in an uncharted region. The difference, Holt emphasized, was that humans were willing to adapt. The Shenok shuttle arrived at the docking bay, exuding a quiet aura of imposing superiority. The Shenok representatives emerged, tall and slender, wearing regalia that implied high status. They moved without hurry, their posture poised and symmetrical, reflecting the cultural obsession with flawlessness. Their expressions were reserved, almost clinical, as they observed the somewhat worn condition of the Nova Seeker's corridors. Rhea met them accompanied by a small security detail, carefully avoiding anything that might be perceived as hostility. The formalities of introduction were brief and cool. The Shenok expressed their intent. They wished to examine how humans had activated the prototype's space-time manipulation core, an action the Shenok had deemed impossible or unfit. When the group transferred over to the alien vessel, the Shenok delegates walked through the same corridors the humans had initially explored, but their demeanor grew noticeably distant. Where humans saw beauty in the organic shapes, the Shenok saw error. They remarked that the corridors were not shaped according to the standard Shenok geometry, describing the design as misaligned and unrefined. The rhetorical distance between the two perspectives became painfully clear. However, upon reaching the core chamber, the atmosphere shifted. The Shenok observed how the humans had pieced together partial solutions, bridging the mismatch between organic signals and mechanical data flows. The concept of making do with incomplete precision seemed bewildering, yet they could not deny the results. They stared at the readouts, confirming successful micro-jumps performed by small probes. The journeys were short and carried some risk, but they worked. One Shenok representative, clearly a senior figure among them, studied the demonstration with an almost palpable internal conflict. For an extended period, they recorded every detail. Then, in soft, measured words, they admitted that the Shenok race had systematically abandoned any creation that failed to match an exact template. Over their long history, they had grown intolerant of the slightest unpredictability, purging entire lines of research. This craft was one such abandoned effort. Seeing humans with far less advanced baseline technology manage incremental improvements to what was believed irreparable caused a wave of reconsideration within Shenok leadership. The delegate explained that the dreadnought had not acted violently because High Command debated the ramifications of discovering that imperfection might, under certain circumstances, yield bigger breakthroughs than unwavering standards. In the wake of this revelation, an unlikely collaboration formed. Under carefully negotiated terms, the Shenok agreed to share knowledge about the vessel's original design, granting insight into the underlying architecture that the humans could only guess at. In return, the humans showed how they overcame the anomalies through hands-on experimentation. This synergy allowed them to refine the once-discarded technology into a stable, if still unconventional, system. News of this joint work began to ripple through human circles as well. The Nova Seeker transmitted updates back to human space, indicating a potential milestone in cross-species relations. The vessel, once seen as failed, started to function more reliably, achieving safe short-range, spaceful jumps. Dr. Holt and her Shenok counterparts systematically revised the entire control apparatus, bridging advanced Shenok mathematics with a flexible engineering approach favored by humanity. Over time, the outcome was more elegant than either side expected. The renaming of the craft came naturally. Rhea Carter christened at the horizon, signifying a new frontier in both technology and diplomacy. Once integrated with a human-ready environment, the ship became the first in a possible series of Shenok-human hybrid vessels. While the Shenok rarely departed from their aesthetic traditions, their delegates began to see that, in certain contexts, letting go of absolute perfection could yield unexpectedly powerful benefits. The barrier of centuries-long Shenok secrecy began to crack, enough that the dreadnought's presence in the Alora Expanse ceased to be a threat. Instead, it acted as an escort, quietly monitoring but not interfering. In the months that followed, the Horizon took flight with a joint crew aboard, humans and Shenok scientists, testing the boundaries of the new propulsion. The leaps in technological synergy were remarkable. By analyzing each flaw in the organic architecture, they discovered new ways to compensate and adapt, leading to a propulsion system that matched or even exceeded typical Shenok standards in certain tests. A star system once a week away in conventional travel could now be reached in hours or minutes, using carefully calculated folds that the living hull modulated. The fiasco that started as a confrontation over a derelict turned into a blueprint for collaborative innovation. Humans introduced robust modular fixes. Shenok experts contributed deep knowledge of advanced physics and advanced structural engineering. The result was a starship whose interior pulsed with life, where technology did not remain static but evolved with each adaptation. As they refined the underlying structure, Dr. Holt discovered that the so-called anomalies in the initial design were actually emergent phenomena that allowed dynamic recalibration during spacefold operations. The Shenok had considered these emergent effects unacceptable because they defied their notion of repeatable perfection. To the humans, the unpredictability was a puzzle to be tested, harnessed, and eventually transformed into a controlled advantage. This shift in perspective resonated through the partnership. Discussions between the species grew more philosophical. They began to compare how each civilization perceived progress and perfection. For the humans, the road forward involved coping with flaws until workable solutions emerged. The Shenok, on the other hand, had always expected near-flawless execution from the outset. The horizon became a living testament that each perspective had merit, yet synergy required both. By the year's end, the horizon was fully operational. It served as a central symbol of unity and changed hearts on both sides. Some Shenok traditionalists remained skeptical, insisting that dedicating resources to a once-failed concept was a waste. But younger generations within the Shenok displayed renewed curiosity, admiring the humans' resilience. Meanwhile, many humans who had viewed the Shenok as aloof and dismissive witnessed a more open-minded side of them. Formal agreements for technology exchange began to circulate. Diplomatic envoys planned expansions of the partnership, recognizing that combining the Shenok's mastery of advanced materials with humanity's irrepressible drive for experimentation could launch a new era. Rhea Carter, who captained the Nova Seeker from the start, now found herself standing on the updated command platform within the horizon. She oversaw the final calibration of a large-scale spacefold test that would take them to an unexplored sector rumored to contain a black hole cluster. That mission would be a definitive demonstration of how robust the hybrid design had become. The command platform itself resembled a new approach, merging organic console surfaces with refined digital readouts, all displayed in an aesthetically balanced environment. No one wore heavy suits now. The atmospheric composition had been stabilized thanks to an integrated system weaving Shenok climate control with sturdy human environmental engineering. The living walls subtly glowed, reflecting the state of the spacefold core. The personal transformations were also evident. Dr. Holt, who had once approached everything with purely scientific detachment, developed a more philosophical lens, marveling at how the essence of life could merge with technology. Lieutenant Harrington, always enthralled with raw data, learned from the Shenok to appreciate mathematical elegance. Even the Shenok delegates present on the horizon had relaxed their formerly rigid posture, some admitting that they never expected their people to collaborate so deeply with another race. Through trial and error, the misfit craft that once seemed the epitome of a defective idea had evolved into a shining example of the synergy that awaits those who look beyond established boundaries. Reports circulated back to both human and Shenok homeworlds, describing the advanced leaps in propulsion. The idea of forging a flotilla of similar ships began to take shape. The fear of combining living tissue with synthetic hulls diminished once demonstrations proved the system could be maintained safely without monstrous side effects. A plan emerged to create scientific outposts in uncharted regions, using these new, fold-capable ships for logistics. Though the Shenok remained outpaced not only human technology, but also the mainstream of Shenok engineering. Debates about design philosophy raged in Shenok academies and human universities alike. Some criticized the risk of pushing untested boundaries. Others hailed it as the beginning of a golden age, all triggered by the acceptance of imperfection as a catalyst for growth. Rhea Carter oversaw final checks on the command platform. The hull's living display shimmered with swirling geometry, indicating readiness. She felt a sense of pride and awe. She silently recalled the first moment she saw the faint signal in the Alora Expanse, never suspecting it would lead to a transformation at this scale. Standing near her, a Shenok liaison studied the readouts with a calm focus. They both realized that success could fundamentally alter how each species viewed the cosmos. Even if it failed or encountered unforeseen complications, the lesson was already learned. Progress did not always rise from a flawless plan. Sometimes it emerged from dogged determination to repurpose what was once tossed aside. With a measured wave of the integrated console, the chain of space-fold leaps began. Observers on distant monitors watched the horizon vanish in a ripple of distorted starlight, only for it to reappear moments later well beyond scanning range of even the most advanced conventional ships. Repeated leaps followed, each one a testament to the synergy of invention. Though the gravitational forces threatened to destabilize the hull, the organic matrix adapted in real time, changing its resonance to mitigate potential ruptures. The leaps were risky, but the vessel never faltered, confirming that the so-called flaws were actually dynamic strengths. The final jump placed the horizon in the outskirts of that unusual black hole cluster, an achievement no standard craft dared attempt. The mission's success was broadcast widely, sending ripples of excitement across human and Shenok societies. Upon returning from that mission, the horizon was welcomed with a modest but heartfelt ceremony in orbit around a neutral station. Representatives of both species watched from observation decks as the ship demonstrated final docking maneuvers with seamless efficiency. Then, through official channels, a joint statement was delivered. The vessel once labeled a worthless failure had become a testament to collaboration and to the idea that imperfection can become a driving force behind creative breakthroughs. The speech spanned no direct quotes, but the core message resonated. It emphasized that the greatest leaps forward do not arise from rigid frameworks alone. They also emerge from the willingness to adapt, to accept the friction of trial and error, to see beyond the immediate obstacle, and to build success from scattered pieces. In the aftermath, commercial interests, research institutions, and various political entities from both sides expressed interest in replicating the approach. Some proposed using the new design for peaceful exploration of the galaxy's void. Others imagined the technology's potential for defensive or offensive applications, though so far no official stance had embraced that path. The original source of the ship, still overshadowed by the grandeur of the Shenok Empire, left many unsolved questions about what else might lie dormant in forgotten corners of the cosmos. Did the Shenok have more so-called discarded prototypes? If so, might they likewise lead to revelations that balance the line between perfection and possibility? Rhea Carter, in reflection, noted that the story was not about simply seizing advanced hardware. It was about how an unwavering culture of perfection came face to face with a civilization content to try, fail, and try again. This synergy illuminated a crucial truth. All sentient life, no matter how advanced, grapples with limitations. Whether those limitations are accepted or spurned shapes the trajectory of progress. The horizon soared into new frontiers with that lesson written into its very bones, demonstrating that what one society dismisses can be the cornerstone of another's triumph. In subsequent years, further developments ensured that the single collaborative vessel became the progenitor of multiple prototypes. The next generation of Shenok human ships retained the aesthetic fluidity of the organic approach while employing slightly more systematic fail-safes. This fusion of philosophies signaled a gentle but profound evolution in interstellar relations, hinting that the future belonged to those who recognized the power of bridging differences. Over time, entire new lanes of commerce and exploration opened. Some whispered that if this continued, an era of mutual respect might emerge, redefining alliances across the galaxy. It was hardly a utopia, but it offered hope, a rare commodity in a cosmos often shaped by conflict and mistrust. Ultimately, the horizon became an emblem not just of technology, but of perspective. For Rhea Carter and her fellow crew members, the memory of stepping into that alien craft for the first time remained a pivotal moment. They had walked through corridors that felt alive, steered a living starship across unimaginable distances, and turned the concept of defect into the foundation for discovery. Their alliances and achievements did not rely on elaborate illusions of flawlessness, but on an earnest embrace of the unconventional. They went forward to discover new corners of reality, confident in the belief that what lay beyond the impossible might merely be undiscovered terrain, especially when guided by the humility to see value in what is broken or misunderstood. Thus, within the labyrinth of cosmic frontiers, the story of the horizon lived on as a reminder that even the mightiest civilizations can harbor and use treasures in their wake. All it took was a crew willing to probe the boundaries of comfort, to see potential where others saw only waste. In the final tally, those ragged edges, those anomalies that refused to align perfectly, were precisely the ingredients that propelled them into territories once thought unreachable. The Alora Expanse, once a lonely patch of darkness in the star map, transformed into a beacon of collaborative endeavor, proving to the galaxy that progress is often born not from pristine perfection, but from the delicate interplay of curiosity, adaptability, and the courage to breathe life into a so-called flawed design.